Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
A December to remember. That's what this is all about this month. That's what we're talking about. And, you know, there was all of this hype before Thanksgiving about how short the Christmas period was going to be, right? Like there's like a really short window between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that window for me has become so long. It's like, come on, you guys, it's like a little over 3 weeks, but how much fun has it been, right? So I started the season saying I wasn't really going to decorate for Christmas, but every afternoon Jeff comes upstairs and like there's some more Christmas out. I don't know, I just can't help it. By the time Christmas gets here, every box will be empty. So today's talk was totally inspired by that reading. I've got all the necessary equipment. You know, we do. Each and every one of us does. So the original idea of the talk was your savings account, your Christmas club. Anybody remember a Christmas club? My folks had a Christmas club. They had a vacation club. They had like, you know, we're going to tuck a little money away. And remember layaways, right? So that's pretty much all a thing of the past. But it's still important, I believe, for us to remember our spiritual tools and to keep them well sharpened and polished and allow ourselves to sort of build up during the good times that spiritual muscle that we kind of sometimes need to be a little stronger in the not so good times. Ernest Holmes in Living the Science of Mind wrote about having money available. How comfortable it makes us feel to have a good fat checking account and an account big enough to draw on in emergencies without impoverishing us when it comes to paying for our ordinary needs. Let's talk about another kind of account, which is equally important. We are calling it our spiritual bank account because we believe there are real spiritual forces that we can draw on and deposit in our own minds, which can be used in any emergency, in any stress, or any strain in life. I love that idea, that we can build it up. We can build up those muscles till we get to a point where we can remember our truth, even when we're stressing out. There's a bad joke about a guy he's just praying, Lord, let me win the lottery. Just come on. I want to win the lottery. And a booming voice shows up in his head saying, meet me halfway, buy a ticket. Right? Sometimes we're like that. You know, we forget that we've already got everything that we need to make it through everything. Because we're so in need of creating a miracle. We want that miracle, but we have, each of us, everybody has exactly what they need to create, to manifest that miracle, whatever it is. But we need to access it. We need to remember that it's there. And just like a financial account, when we have a robust spiritual account, a robust spiritual way of approaching life, then we have all of the necessary equipment. We really do. We've got all of it. We've got so much necessary equipment that we can, too, take it to the streets and share it. Because when we live life from that place of knowing that we are enough and we have enough and there will always be enough, more than enough, then we get to have a realization that God is truly the only power. And that each of us, everyone is an individualized expression of it. And because it's all God, there is always something greater moving. And I think we've all had periods in our life where it's like, why is this happening to me? But then we get to the other side and we're like, I can see why it's happening to me. Why I was the necessary equipment that had to make this happen for the next thing to happen. There's a story of a guy in the early 20th century, and you might have heard of him, George Washington Carver. He was a slave, and he literally revolutionized agriculture as it was known then. There was a blight that happened. The boll weevil hit the cotton fields, right, of the South, and everybody was sort of like trying to figure out what to do next. And Carver, he had a really strong sense of nature and of God. And he was very devoted to his spiritual practice. And he would spend time in prayer and meditation, just asking God for direction and for guidance. And one day, he asked about peanuts. He's like, there's got to be something more we can do about peanuts to make peanuts a valuable crop in the South. And he discovered through his practice, he wrote about 300 different uses for peanuts, different ways that peanuts could be used to make them a more viable product. Now remember, you guys, this was like, in the earliest 20th century, so Skippy and Jeff weren't around. They hadn't been here yet. So, but in his prayer work, he was guided to the idea of rotating crops, to preserve the soil, to enrich the soil. And when you rotated crops, not only did you enrich the soil, but you increased the productivity of whatever crop you were putting there. And it all came to him from prayer. I mean, he was just open to the idea there's got to be something more, something greater happening right here. And so, even in today's world, we rotate crops. In fact, now, not only do we rotate crops, but the latest trend is you take a part of your field and you plant wildflowers on it, whatever native species is in your world, and you allow that to spend a couple of years really, truly feeding that soil. It's all about taking an obstacle and saying to yourself, there is a possibility here. There's a reason, and I don't need to know what the reason is. I just need to know that each and every one of us, has the necessary equipment to move through it, rise above it, and get busy helping others. We do that by recognizing God as the only power. We do that by seeing God in everyone, and by remembering there is something greater moving that we're not aware of. From recognizing God, that is the first place where we go in spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer. It's the first thing we do. And if the only thing you do from a prayer perspective is to recognize that not only is there just one power, one presence, one source, that includes oneself, and say thank you, that's all one needs really to do in a prayer. But that idea of there's only one, when we do that, and we really get there, then there can be no room for fear. Because fear is when we're feeling separated from the one. You can't be in a fearful state and totally know that you are divine expression of the one, the only one. Who was it that said the two most important words in the American language? Oh, Goldsmith, is as and is. As and is. God as me is abundant. God as me is healthy. God as me is. God as me is never fearful or worried or doubtful or lacking of anything. God as me is always available with all of the needed equipment. That includes faith. In trusting that divine wisdom and the divine timing of it all. Intuition by listening. Really listening, not to the stuff out there, but to what's in here. And it's about courage to know that whatever it is we're facing it with the best partner anyone could ever ask for. Hafiz said, "Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you live in better conditions." Which takes me to that idea of seeing God in everyone and everything, embracing our oneness. It means finding the divine in whatever situation we're experiencing, finding the divine in whoever is pushing our button. Not that anyone would ever do that, especially during the holiday season, but just in case, right? When there is someone who's frustrating me, I do two things. I first give thanks that they're not part of my family, right? And I recognize that God is too in this person. I may not see it. I don't need to see it. I just need to know it and allow myself to breathe and come to the situation from that place of clarity, that place of love, of empathy, of understanding. That place of being willing to not need to control this individual. I don't even, they're not part of the family. I don't even have to, may not have to see them again. But whether we're interacting with a loved one or a stranger or a neighbor, they're always going to push a button. We get to decide how we react. And when we react from a place of knowing that this too is the divine expressing itself in a somewhat different way, but it's the truth. Our spiritual equipment, when we come to that place of understanding that we are truly all one, it brings out compassion by seeing the divine. It brings out patience by just allowing space for the other to say and do what they're going to say and do. And it also allows us to bring in the equipment of forgiveness because we move out of judgment then. We don't need to judge someone. If we're all one, we just need to breathe and embrace the fact that there is something greater happening. Wayne Dyer said, "When you begin to see God in everyone, you will treat everyone differently." Ernest Holmes, "A realization of the presence of God is the most powerful healing agency known to the mind of man." The realization of the presence of God is the most powerful healing agency known. Just recognizing that. And then life is kind of full of surprises, right? Some of them really fun, some of them really challenging. But when we trust that the bigger picture, that there is something greater moving in that bigger picture, when we look back, it's going to reveal how wonderfully Spirit was expressing and moving itself. It allows those setbacks to carry a divine purpose, doesn't it? It really does. Today is my wedding anniversary. And I'm reminded of the fact that when Jeff and I reconnected, we were both having some challenges. We were sort of in miserable relationships, and we didn't necessarily like the way life was unfolding for either one of us. And it had gotten so bad that we were both willing to take action. And when at least for me, when I realized I was ready to take action, and all of a sudden an email showed up, and it's like, "I'm going to Vegas. Would you like to meet me for dinner one night?" It's only a 5-hour drive. But the idea was there was something greater moving. My life had to get really, really crappy for me to get to the realization that this is crappy and I'm ready for something better. Something is always moving for our greater good, whether we can see it or not, and most of the time, we can't. But when we start to embrace life from a place of knowing our power and our divinity, of knowing that we're worthy, we don't put up with stuff for as long. We are willing to be open and curious. We're willing to let go. We're willing to allow God's space to move. Our spiritual equipment that this brings into action is our resiliency. Bouncing back, even when we don't think we can. But we know we've got the tools. We've got the community that can support us. Resiliency. We allow ourselves to have gratitude. Gratitude for what we have. Gratitude for what we're willing to let go of. And there's the equipment of openness that allows us to welcome whatever the possibilities are that are going to show up next, because it will show up. Nancy Thayer wrote, "The universe is always speaking to us, sending us little messages, causing coincidences, the serendipities, reminding us to stop, to look around, to believe in something else, to believe in something more." Something more. Emma Curtis Hopkins, a mystic in her own right, would say when things are looking their worst, look up. Just 45-degree angle up and just be quiet and look up. Change your perspective. Change. Let go of your need to control and just look up. And you just look up until you feel that shift. That shift in what is truly happening beyond the scene. Beyond what we can see, what we can know, what we can touch. Just look up. So, we already have all of our spiritual tools. We already have all of the necessary equipment. And the way we build up that spiritual account is through daily spiritual practice. Through prayers and affirmations and visualization. And you probably think, gosh, does she say this every time she talks? Yes, I do. Because it is important. It is important that we have a daily spiritual practice. That we recognize that we ourselves can provide acts of service daily. We can do good in the world daily. We could do good in our life daily. We can give of our time, our talent, our treasures, our love, our energy, our joy. We can just open up our hearts and listen to people. Just listen. We can start our day coming from a place of an abundant life, a place filled with gratitude and grace. Just not only allowing grace into our lives, but being that grace to someone else. This teaching, this philosophy, does not guarantee that life is going to always go well, that there will not be challenges, there will not be troubles and pain and sadness. There will not be times when we don't feel stuck. This teaching doesn't guarantee any of that. But here's what it does guarantee. It guarantees us a way to look at whatever is going on. A way to be with whatever is going on. And to a way to approach whatever is going on from that place of grace, of love, of courage, of forgiveness. That place of oneness with the one. That is what this teaching guarantees us. When we have a spiritual practice, that's what that spiritual practice guarantees us. It guarantees us that things will be a little lighter, a little brighter. They won't last quite as long. That the right action and the right reaction is available to make whatever it is that's going on just a little better. And sometimes that's all we need, is just a little better, a little more willing. This teaching guarantees us that we can look at whatever it is from a higher perspective and not get caught up in the muck of it all, but to allow that inner divine light to suit up and show up. So this week, I invite all of us to remember that we have all of the necessary equipment. Each and every one of us has everything we need to be an instrument of peace, of joy, of love. Each of us has more than enough to help others, to raise others, and to feed some really good mojo into our collective consciousness. Just by being who we are. Just by letting go of having to control it, fix it, change it, and say, okay, I'm going to look up. And I'm going to listen. And then I'll act. Because when we do that, when we rise above it all, we tap into that equipment that's ours, then we are enough. I am enough. I have enough. I am one with the infinite. And that is the truth for every single person. Every single person on this planet. So, this week, your assignment is to go out and make some spiritual deposits in other people's accounts. You know? Be an instrument of peace, an instrument of love. Just be present. That's all. Just be present. The world needs us to be more present. Our souls need us to be more present. And to remember, we are so much more than just enough. That's our truth. Namaste.